Now we're going to do inline text semantics and demarcating edits. That's kind of like a big word, demarcating, demarcation, demarcation, define. It's like, the action of fixing the boundary limits on something, a dividing line. So demarcating, when we look at that in the spec, we go all the way down to inline text elements, we're using those, and then demarcating edits are for deleting and deletions and insertions, del ins, however you want to say it. So we're doing demarcating stuff and inline text semantics in this one, and using the documentation to answer these questions so we can learn. Use this element for text, which should be displayed lower and often smaller than the main spam text. That's going to be sub. So there's sub and sup, and sub is like for text that should be displayed lower and smaller. Sup is for like x to the power of 2. 2 would be the sup. Use this element to enclose a range text that has been deleted from a document. Del, this element is often but need not be rendered with strike through text, and we can just check that. Deleted, represent a range text that's been deleted. This element encloses an abbreviation, and that's ABBR. And I have a little example here of ABBR right there. Paragraph I do HTML, and the abbreviation is Hypertext Markup Language. We show it, and then I hover over HTML, and it gives me what the abbreviation stands for. So that's pretty cool. I like that one. Use this element to enclose sample output from a computer program, usually displayed in the browser's default font. There's SAMP. And in addition to SAMP, we have pre, right, which is pre-formatted, so raw, string, literal. And then we also have SAMP pre-code. Code is for code that would be like computer code, code you write. So SAMP, pre-code, and KBD. And keyboard input, so like if it's like keyboard input, put in KBD. SAMP is sample output from a computer. Code would be like here's some computer code. And pre keeps the formatting. So you might have pre, and then inside pre, code, and then you have code, which is, hey, this is computer code, and it's formatted, and those line breaks are kept. Hope that made sense. This element encloses a reference to a creative work, and so that's going to be cite. And there's some interesting things with cite, quote, block quote, and the cite attribute. And so I put those all together here. And so let's just look at the page first. This is what the page looks like. And so here is cite. So we're putting cite right there. Surfer eaten by wave. So I watched that video. It's pretty amazing. I'll try to find you the link at the end of this video, and then you can check it out. I can't show it to you, otherwise I'm using somebody else's content. You're not allowed to do that. But you put cite around a creative work, right? So this is a creative work. Jaws is a creative work, right? Game of Thrones, a creative work. So those are all books. So that's what you put cite around. So don't confuse it with like, hey, this is the citation, like you're writing a paper in college or something. That's not what it's for. So cite is a reference to a creative work. It must include the title of a work or URL reference. Creative work may include book, paper, essay, poem, right? All this stuff. You could read it. Pause the video. Here, I'll put it down a little bit. There, all that stuff. The W3 spec states that reference to creative work may include the author's name, while the WHATWG, and so WHATWG is like another sort of group that helps define what the WHAT is. Web Hypertext Application Technology Working Group. The W3 is, I think, carries more weight, but anyhow, two different groups, and so I lean towards that the site is not for a person's name. It's for a creative work, and a person. Well, you could argue a person is a creative work, perhaps the greatest creative work, right? That's not what site's for. It's for a creative work that people made that wasn't made, by making another person. Use the cite attribute on, and then not only do we have cite, which is for creative work, you also have the cite attribute for block quote and quote. So that can be a little confusing. Here's an article that goes into crazy detail. You can check it out. So here's a paragraph. Every time Kenny is killed, and this is straight out of the standard documentation, kind of a crazy example, right? Stan will announce, and then we have a quote, oh my God, they killed Kenny. And then inside here, we have the cite attribute. So remember, we have the cite element, and that's for reference to a creative work like Games of Thrones, Jaws, something like that, all this stuff, one of those creative works. So we have the site element, and we have the site attribute. And the site attribute can be used with quote or block quote. So quotes are for short quotes, short inline quotation, quotations that don't require paragraph breaks. For long quotes, use a block quote. So block quote puts it out as a block quote, right? And so here's a big old block quote, and this is what it looks like. Whoops. Here we go. Block quote. There's the big old block quote. So it puts it into a different place, whereas this was just Q, right? This is the block quote. And I put a little text on each side just so we could see how this is offset. And that's from the movie Jaws. And that's using the site attribute. So block quote and quote have the site attribute, and then we also have the site element, which is for creative work. So those are the differences between those three. All right, use this tag to enclose a fragment of computer code. By default, it is displayed in the browser's default monospace font. Note, this tag does not preserve line breaks. So that's going to be code. It's computer code. And let's just look at that so we could see the documentation. See the documentation code, fragment of computer code. All right, use this element to highlight text, and that's going to be mark. And so mark will highlight text, like you're going to mark it up, mark that text. Use this element for text, which should be displayed higher and often smaller than that'd be soup, like super element, sup. Use this element to enclose either a time on 24-hour clock or a date, and we'll go time, and that's right here. So we had sup, and then we had time. Use this element to enclose a short quotation, Q. What tag goes here? What tag goes here? KBD. So control and plus, and that's exactly out of the definition, KBD. KBD, keyboard. Right, looks like this. There we go, control plus. Save the document by pressing control S. The strike through text for the line you would enclose the text in this element, S. That's it. So we gotta go back. And we have S, strike through. Not appropriate when indicating document edits. For that, use del or insert elements as appropriate. This element is a generic inline container for content. Span. Use this element for side comments and small print, including copyright and legal text independent of its style presentation, small. And do not use this element to increase the gap between lines of text. Use CSS margin property or the paragraph element instead. So don't use break to add space between block level elements. Use this element to enclose a range of text that has been added to a document. A range of text that has been added to a document. So that's going to be INS, ends, right? And let's just look at that. Text that has been added to a document. A range of text added to a document. All right, so that's all of it for this one. I hope you got some good value out of that one. It is 12:01 a.m. And I was going to tell you, I was going to try to find that link to the video for you. Hold on. All right, so here's the link to that crazy video, the surfer being eaten by a wave. KM7 lowercase o p a. And I'll put that right here just for fun. Just for fun. Mentioned in video. There we go. And yeah, and if you go there, you can play it. It won't play right now, but look at that guy falling. That's a pretty big wave. It's pretty crazy. All right, so that's a little bit more about semantic HTML, and I hope those exercises helped you learn more about using HTML tags. I think that's a really great exercise, and I hope reviewing it helped reinforce some of that knowledge.